We have lots to cover in today's video, including the potential of a blockbuster deal. We're going to discuss the possibility of the Leafs and Sabres, even though they're division rivals, hooking up on a potential blockbuster deal. Plus, we have the latest trade talk around the New Jersey Devils and the Nashville Predators involving UC Saros. Plus, lots of updates in regards to coaching, especially in the staffs of the Ottawa Senators and the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was locker cleanout day for the New York Rangers, so we've learned some of their injuries as well. Same goes for the Dallas Stars. Big update on Joe Pavelski and some of their Dallas Stars plans for their team going into next year. A lot more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to cover today. Let's get started first with some news around the coaching world. We got an announcement on one and a rumor on another. The Ottawa Senators today did announce the remainder of their coaching staff. Of course, we knew a couple weeks back they hired new head coach Travis Green. We knew there was going to be some more changes within the staff and who the assistants were going to be. There's been some rumors in the past couple of days, and some of those rumors have been confirmed, and we now know who the full staff will be. So Mike Yeo joins the team. Of course, he was most recently with the Vancouver Canucks as an assistant coach. Of course, he's been a head coach a couple of different times as well, including the Minnesota Wild. He was an associate coach with the St. Louis Blues, variety of teams. He was the Flyers. He's worked a lot. He's got a lot of coaching experience, a decent amount of head coaching and assistant coaching experience, and has worked with Travis Green before. So certainly Mike Yeo is well respected, comes with a lot of experience, so he will be a nice new addition to Ottawa staff, and to no big surprise because he's worked with Green a lot in the past as well. But Nolan Baumgartner joins the Senators from the Manitoba Moose. Of course, he's worked with the Canucks before, and Baumgartner, a former NHL defenseman himself, didn't have a long career, but he's been a terrific D coach and a well-respected guy as well. So Baumgartner will handle the D. Don't know exactly what the responsibilities for Mike Yeo will be, but it's two really well-experienced guys that are well-respected and should be a big addition to the coaching staff. They also confirmed today as well that Senators legend Daniel Alfredsson will return behind the bench as part of the coaching staff. Of course, he took on an assistant coaching role earlier last year when he and Jacques Martin took over after they dismissed DJ Smith. Alfredsson seemed to get I guess you could say a little bit of a bug for coaching and has really enjoyed it. And I think a lot of people were hoping, I know a lot of Sens fans were hoping, and I think many of us expected that he would be back, but now we know for sure that he would be. It certainly would have been, sad news if he decided not to pursue it, because he seemed to be really good at it. And obviously you get that instant respect from the players. Before getting behind the bench, he was already working with the team in player development earlier in the year and was getting on the ice a lot and interacting a lot, especially with the youth and the young stars there. So certainly had a big impact. So nice to see him back. And Ben Sexton, also who joined the team last year, will remain. Justin Peters will remain as goaltending coach. He was already, that position's already been turned over since the ownership took over and since DJ was let go. Justin Peters just took over that spot, I think halfway through last season or whatever it was. It was later in the season. So he was promoted from Belleville and did a really good job and seemed to be well regarded, and amongst the Steve Staios, Michael Landlauer, and now Staios recommended to Green that he continue on. And like I said, the previous goaltending coach, there was definitely some concerns because the goaltending was a weak position. It wasn't doing well, but Peters did have some good success there, and they were better down the stretch finishing the year, which there's still a lot of big question marks over the Sens goaltending, but certainly having a fresh coach there will hopefully do good things, and that sounds like a good experienced coaching staff for them to work with next year, since it's going to be an important year for them to take a big step forward. In Toronto, of course, we know they most recently hired Craig Berube as their head coach. Still waiting to hear how everything's going to shake out for the full staff. They haven't made an announcement as of yet, but I know some reporters have already confirmed that Dean Chenoweth will not be returning on the Leafs bench as an assistant coach. And of course, we already know as well that Manny Malhotra will not be returning because he's already accepted a AHL head coaching job working back with the Vancouver Canucks. So we know those guys are not returning. In terms of Guy Boucher, we don't know what the status is of him as of yet. That may not be completely determined either. So he's the one assistant that we don't really know yet, so we'll have to wait and see. Former New York Islanders head coach and longtime assistant to Barry Trotz, Lambert, is rumored, and at this point it's believed to be pretty much a given and expected that he will be named as the one of the assistant coaches to Craig Berube. He might even be named associate coach. So obviously Lambert comes with a lot of experience. Like I said, he worked with Barry Trotz for a long time, had a couple of years as head coach with the Islanders. Didn't have the greatest go of it there, but certainly a lot of the issues I think he ran into on Long Island was Lou Lamoriello and not constructing the roster, not making any moves, which he didn't have any control over, but he was going to put in a tough position there as well. Not to say that, he didn't learn from his experience and did everything perfectly, because I don't think that's fair either. But I think Lambert did an okay job. But like I said, he was well respected as a longtime assistant coach, and before he got the gig coaching the Islanders, he was somebody that I know many people felt would get his turn and would get the opportunity eventually. Because like I said, he's just a smart guy that was well respected, had a good record as an assistant coach, and well, that's where he's at now. There's only so many head coaching jobs around the league. Of course, there's a lot more assistant coaching gigs with each team employing anywhere from 3 or 4 or more of them in some cases. So we'll see if Lambert to the Leafs gets officially announced here in the next few days. Of course, like I said, between the Dallas Stars and the New York Rangers, we've heard from a lot of their players as they're cleaning up their lockers and doing their end-of-season media availability. I know in the Big Apple, New York, Jacob Trouba revealed that he had battled a pretty serious ankle injury earlier in the season. He said essentially that there was a break, but it wasn't a weight-bearing bone, if I believe is what he said, so he was able to play through it, but a chunk of his ankle came off. He said it was kind of it sounded gruesome. I'm not really sure exactly what happened or exactly, it's hard to describe the injury, but there is belief that I know some people were jumping on it saying, okay, he was taking a lot of crap for how he played in the playoffs. Now we know he's playing with a broken ankle, and that's not the case. Some people didn't even really listen to everything he fully said and really grasped how everything was. But essentially, Trouba, by the time he played through all that, he did have time to heal. He was considered, healed by the time the playoffs started. So you can't blame his playoff lack of good play, we'll call it, his playoff blunders, because to me he sees red and goes for the big hit too much, and defensively he was a major liability, and he has taken a lot of crap for how he played especially in the third round, a little bit in the second round too, and I think it's all very well deserved criticism. He's the captain of that team, and they certainly need him to be better. I know a lot of fans, like I said, are calling for him to be moved out. I'm not sure that's going to be an easy task for Chris Drury and the Rangers to do. Like I said yesterday when we talked about it, the last couple of days, he's been a hot topic here. If you buy him out, I mean, how's that going to go over buying out your captain at $8 million, after a run to the conference final? They would save some money for a couple of years. They would knock his cap hit down in half. I think you'd be better off to try to trade him and retain 50%, so you don't have the extra years tacked on that a buyout would. But at the same time, like I said, he does have trade protection in his contract, and we know he doesn't want to leave New York. He made it clear when he was leaving Winnipeg that he wanted to be in New York, not only for himself, but for himself and his wife, to pursue both of their dreams. And of course, she's in the medical field, working there as a doctor, so I'm sure they would not want to up and relocate. So I don't really know how that could work. At the same time, he only has so much control, so I don't know how that's all going to go. I just know he seems to be getting a lot of flack from fans. I'm not sure how internally the team feels about it, but the injury that was revealed today by him certainly was interesting to hear. On the Dallas side of things, certainly it looks like, from what we heard today from players talking to reporters, that Joe Pavelski is likely calling it a career. He said that he kind of made it known earlier in the year that this was it for him. The 39-year-old has had a heck of a career, a former 7th-round pick, one of the last guys taken in his draft year. A lot of people didn't even think he would ever make it, let alone carve out this long of a career. They really don't. The only elusive thing on his resume that's not there is the Stanley Cup. He's done a lot of other good things. I mean, one of the best players in front of the net with tipping pucks. Not a big guy either, and he's certainly battled like a warrior throughout his time in San Jose, as well as his last number of years here with the Dallas Stars. So he said that it's not. He didn't want anybody quoting him and saying it's 100% confirmed that he's done. But he said earlier in the year that was what he was telling people, and that's what he had in his mind, that this was going to be it. And it's, basically done, but he, still needs to, make sure 100% before he, files the papers and considers himself 100% retired. But I mean, like I said, since he's left San Jose, based on how his contracts went and how quickly he was to extend each time, and the fact that didn't happen, a lot of people already kind of suspected that he must not be planning to play next year. So that looks to be the case. So we'll see in the coming days, or if sometime over the summer, if that gets confirmed. But we heard it straight from Pavelski himself saying it's more likely going to be the case. Dallas, of course, has some big contracts to look after throughout the season. I know Thomas Harley had a real good year as a young defenseman. He needs to be extended after his rookie contract has expired. And Dallas does have interest to bring back defenseman Chris Tanev, who they acquired at the trade deadline, as well as Matt Duchene, who they signed on a one-year deal after he got bought out from the Nashville Predators last year. I think it's fair to say that the Dallas Stars believe that their window is still very much open, and I think it's fair to say as well they do have a good mix there of some veterans and some youth. They've been able to turn things over with really good drafting and getting a lot of players that without having high picks, between late first round and second round, third round picks that are converting into being real good players outside of Miro Heiskanen. They haven't really had much in the way of very high picks at all. So they've done very, very well. If you look at guys like Robertson and Ottinger and Johnston, they were not, real high. They were, later first round or second rounders or whatever. So they've done a terrific job there, and they've been able to blend those guys in. They still have Maverick Bork coming as well, Liam Bichel. So those guys can mix in with what they have. Pavelski, like I said, likely doesn't go back next year, and they would like to have Duchene back if they can. Obviously, he had a real good year for a cheap amount of money, so we'll see. I mean, obviously, he has his buyout from Nashville that's still getting paid for, so certainly that might help him take a little bit less, and he's still in a no-tax state, so that'll help too. But obviously, the Stars may not be able to keep both Duchene and Tanev. It'll be challenging, but they're certainly interested in doing so. I think they have around $15 million in space, but they got to do a backup goaltender. They got to sign Harley, and there's a couple other players too that are, that they need to have a contract there. So it's not like they have tons of space, but they do have some flexibility. Be curious to see what they come to terms on. I know Dave Pagnone of thefourthperiod.com today reporting that UC Saros is more likely than not going to be dealt. He says right now that Saros' camp is looking for an $8+ million contract on a long-term deal. In the latest intel, he's hearing that the Nashville Predators don't have the appetite to go that high on a new contract. They would like to keep him, and they would be very interested in signing him, but not for that type of money. So obviously teams like the Devils, the Kings, to some degree the Leafs, there's uncertainty in Toronto's crease, but obviously for the Leafs to take on a big high-paying goaltender, they certainly would need a big contract to go out. So if they do end up trading Marner or moving on from Tavares, which is difficult to say if those are going to happen, but if they did, depending on what came back in those deals, that would be the only way they could do it. Or they'd have to trade like Morgan Riley or another big name, and there's not like they have 4 or 5 guys making all the money and everybody else on cheaper deals, so it's hard to imagine. There's limited on who could go, right? So we'll see. But LA, New Jersey, amongst other teams that are the main ones mentioned. And when it comes to the Devils, GM Tom Fitzgerald has made it clear publicly as well that his 10th overall selection in the 24 NHL draft is available. If he can find the right impact player to come help that team right away, that pick will be something he's willing to part with. So we'll have to see what that does for the Devils and what they end up doing. So stay tuned for that. We'll be talking lots more probably in the next week or so about what we might expect to see at the draft coming up here towards the end of the month. Of course, another big potential blockbuster deal I want to talk about. I know we've talked a lot about Marner. It's a hot topic, a top-notch player, getting a lot of attention. I came across a new article today, this one from Daily Faceoff, talking about 6 trade destinations that make sense for Mitch Marner and what the potential returns could be. And looking through some of them are kind of already ones we've kind of already looked at before and kind of talked about a bit. But the one that caught my eye the most that we hadn't talked about before was the Buffalo Sabres. Now, of course, they reference in this article that Buffalo is not far from Toronto. So from Marner's perspective, it's not far from home. It's not like going to Utah and far away from home, and place he's never been, a new market. Like, he may not want that. He does have full control here, right? So if he's going to waive, he's going to probably be picking where he goes. We don't know what his feelings are on that scenario. We do have reports from Pierre LeBrun of TSN and The Athletic saying that from what he's heard, because he's reached out for comment from Marner's camp, and all they've said so far is, as of right now, they have no appetite right now to negotiate a contract extension with the Toronto Maple Leafs come July 1st. So they're content to take this to free agency. Like I said, the Leafs at some point likely will have to have a conversation with him. If they do want to move him, then they're going to have to talk to him. There's no doubt about that. But they're going to have those conversations that, we don't want to get into a contract negotiation either. We think it's best that we part ways. Let's get ahead of this now and figure out a place where you might be willing to sign and, help us get something in return type of deal. They don't have to play ball on an extension if they are dealing with a trader. He agrees to go somewhere, but at the same time, it's something that would be obviously increasing his value substantially if it's something he's willing to entertain. But the Buffalo deal seemed very interesting to me because the author here from Daily Faceoff suggests that the Sabres might be willing to move Dylan Cousins. Now, I think Cousins as a player, that if they come calling the Leafs on Marner, if it's, they know for sure that they're willing to move him, that's a name that's going to get their attention. Now, if you look around some of the other teams that were, rumored, because we looked at some other articles with, looking at some trades. We've looked at Columbus, Utah, Carolina. We don't know if or where Marner would want to go anywhere, right? But some of the names coming back were interesting, for sure. But I think a name like Dylan Cousins would be something that would be a good starting point. Now, I think it would take more than Cousins for the Leafs to say yes. Based on what we saw at the World Championships, Dylan Cousins was, he was amazing. But, this past couple of years, his play in the NHL has been a little bit up and down. I honestly believe he can be a solid 30-goal, 70, 80-point player. And he's not hit his prime yet. He's not, fully maxed out his potential. There's no doubt. There's room to grow for sure. He's young enough that that's possible. The only thing that the Sabres, he's only 23 years old, is that, going to be a player that the Sabres are going to probably be reluctant to move. But, when you're getting a guy like Marner, he's a guy that moves the needle and could help them really move a step up to get into the playoffs. Not to say that Cousins isn't really good, but Marner traditionally has been, putting up 20, 30 points more or more a year. So that's a lot more extra offense, a lot more extra goals, which certainly go a long way to helping him. I mean, certainly imagine Marner playing with Tage Thompson. That could be a really good fit with, Thompson being a centerman who is a goal-scoring, shoot-first type of center. That could be a really good fit. So, there's certainly lots to like about that. And the Sabres, as much as I like Dylan Cousins, they do have lots of other good players that are coming up behind him here. I mean, obviously, we saw J.J. Peterka take a big step last year, hit 30 goals. They got Zach Benson. Matt Savoy's on the way. They get lots of young defense, and I do wonder if the Leafs would try to pry a D-man out of them as well, because they've got Dahlin, they've got Power, Samuelson, and Byram. They're all lefties, though, and I do wonder if they would be willing to move one. I was a little surprised when they brought in Byron for that reason. But, if you can get Cousins and a defenseman, or Cousins and their first-round pick, something like that, that to me is an excellent starting point for the Leafs. That gives them a guy in Cousins who's making a fair bit less than Marner. So they get, looking at $3-4 million in cap space, and they get a player who's got great experience. He's already, internationally, he's been well represented in his country. He's obviously had good experience in the NHL so far, not near his potential. The age is good. There's so much to like there. So much to like that's an easy deal for them to put together. I mean, like I said, if they're going to move them, you want to get good return. Now, of course, yes, they're division rivals. The rivalry's not what it once was. Obviously, the Sabres haven't been as competitive in recent years, but this would take them up a notch. Are the Leafs going to want to move Marner to a team that they play in their division and have to see him 4 times a year? Probably, ideally not, but I think at the same time, they got to go with wherever they get the best return. If they become in a point where they're committed to making this trade, and of course, he's only willing to waive for certain teams, which he has full control here. If he says to them, I will waive, I will agree to get traded, but I'm only going to these spots. And if they happen to be interdivision teams and they can work out a deal, then that's what they have to do. So, you know, they don't have a ton of leverage here. Not to say that the Sabres would even necessarily have to offer Dylan Cozens. They could go in with a younger package, right? So, you know, and if that's the case, maybe the Leafs decide they don't want to do that. I think the Leafs are going to want to, if they move Marner, they're going to need, it has to be a hockey type trade, I think, to get a star player or somebody who can be a cheaper version, younger version star player that can produce. Now, if they don't get that, maybe they get a really good futures package and then they take those assets and flip it to another team for that player. You know, like that's to me would be something like, you know, maybe they get the great assets out of Marner and then they flip it to Carolina for Natchez or something like that, right? Like it could work out. But ideally, a player going back that can be a big piece to help change the dynamic of their team, give them a different kind of player, different kind of contract, and just structurally change it all. So what are your thoughts on Marner for a package to the Sabres, starting with Dylan Cozens, maybe a defenseman in there, maybe a first-round pick, some other second asset for sure, maybe more, hard to say. But to me, it's not ideal because he's a division rival. But I tell you, that's a pretty good package if I'm Toronto. So let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.